So first of all, it's a true honor to stand in front of all of you guys today. When I first received the invitation to speak, I felt a huge wave of fear. In fact, I still have it, right? But it was followed by just overwhelming humility. To be standing in front of you guys, sharing some of the key lessons that I've learned that are so close to my heart, I'm truly humbled by this experience, so let's get started. First, just a little bit about myself. I've been in the IT industry for well over 20 years, but I originally wanted to be a scientist. I imagined myself mixing together different potions in an attempt to make groundbreaking discoveries. But as luck would have it, in the beginning of my career journey, I found myself as a technical writer. Now, I loved being a technical writer. I got to work with some of the most amazing scientists, but one thing that stood out to me is rather than studying science, chemistry, and biology, I actually was studying software coding in an attempt to write software applications to automate my technical documentation signatures. Now, when I fast forward into my career, I've had the privilege of leading countless transitions in cutting-edge technology and business solutions. Whether it's infrastructure, software, or data management transitions, my experiences have continuously reinforced the importance of forward thinking, adaptability, and collaborative partnerships. And that brings me to the core of what I want to talk about today. Today, I want to share 3 lessons in navigating complex transitions. Now, when we fast forward into the rapid acceleration of technology, especially when you guys go into these expo halls, you're going to see a lot of new next generation technology on display. You're going to be able to connect with some amazing partners and vendors and explore several operational strategies. And as you embrace this journey, I want you to think about this set of complex transitions lessons learned that can help you as you navigate through these experiences. Now, I've been in your shoes many times before, excited, enthusiastic, and perhaps overly confident in my ability to lead significant transitions. About 10 years ago, I attended an IT conference very similar to this one, focused on next generation technology in the early stages of being adopted. Now, when I fast forward past that conference, I worked with teams to successfully lead one of the largest physical server transitions into the cloud. At the time, that size of a transition was simply unprecedented. But one thing that stood out to me with this transition is that moving technology is so much easier than leading people and process transitions. And the reason may surprise you. It's because technology doesn't have feelings. So today, we're going to dive into that. I want to paint a picture for you. When we think about complex transitions, we often think about shifting systems, moving data, implementing new tools. But the hardest part of any transition is actually not the technology. It's the people. It's the emotions, relationships, and cultural shifts that must align to drive real success. Now, I've spent years navigating these waters, some calm, and well, others a bit more turbulent. And today, I'm going to share 3 lessons that I've learned about these experiences, and I hope they help you as you lead your own organization through complex transitions. So, a little backstory about myself. I started my lessons learned career over 10 years ago, involving a small in-house IT call center. The goal was to transition the IT call center to a staffing firm. We needed to save costs, streamline our operations, and double the volume and size of our operations. The call center could be easily transitioned into a staffing firm, and they could easily check all those boxes. The problem was that I invited the staffing firm to the location of the call center, not realizing, and this is not a joke, that they were going to show up in a white and red polka dot PT Cruiser, and they parked it right in front of the windows of the current IT call center. Of course, this caused rumors to spin with a quick realization on where my long-term staffing strategy was headed. And that became my first hard lesson in navigating complex transitions. Now, for the record, the lessons learned on that last example was never negotiate in an office with big windows. And for the record, that lesson is a freebie because I'm only going to share 3 lessons with you today. And these lessons are about moving beyond the metrics, the PMO, and the massive Excel data spreadsheets we all love so much. Today, I want to get you to shift your mindset away from technology and what you would normally plan for, and think about people first. Now, in one of my more recent operational transitions, I was part of a team leading a transition of our global operations to an external managed services provider. The goal was to save costs, streamline operations, and introduce automation. My project plan was airtight, and my confidence for a flawless transition was fairly high. We had spent months doing thorough data analysis. We conducted feasibility studies, interviewed team members, audited mailboxes, and then we presented all this data to our stakeholders, who seemingly nodded along in agreement. Who has been here before? You're leading weekly stakeholder sessions where your stakeholders nod along in agreement. They ask questions here and there, they seem engaged, but are they truly engaged? Are they truly aligned? Or are they just interested in the outcomes of your transition and your project? In my case, saving money? Absolutely. My stakeholders were all for that. New data metrics? Count me in. Automation potential? Absolutely. But were my stakeholders understanding the drivers behind the changes needed to the day-to-day operations, or were they just excited about the outcomes? In my case, no. The stakeholders that simply nodded along didn't understand the drivers that were required behind the scenes to the day-to-day operations. Now, when I fast forward, the SLAs are being met, cost savings are piling up, and we're about to talk about our automation pipeline. But that's when I started noticing those stakeholder emails increasing in frequency. Despite all of our metrics showing as green, complaints started rolling in about missed deadlines, incorrectly entered data, and frustrated business users. It was as if all the conversations regarding the drivers behind things like ticketing systems, cost savings, automation pipeline had never even occurred. This leads me to the first of my 3 lessons. We need to flip the stakeholder narrative from passive stakeholders who simply nod along in agreement to accountable investors who are accountable for critical decision making. Think about it. When you're accountable, you're not just interested in the outcomes. You're deeply involved because you have something at stake. You need the initiative to succeed because its success is ultimately your success. When stakeholders become accountable, their commitment changes. They become advocates, owners, and amplifiers of your messages. And here's the kicker, the good and bad messages. This is why it's critical to identify your most influential investors, those whose leadership resonates and whose political power is high. And these stakeholders need more than just a seat at the table. They need to be given accountability. They need to attend your financial negotiation sessions, give your kickoff speeches, and send your change management emails written in their language, not by your communications management team. Because when stakeholders understand the drivers behind things, like resolution times and ticketing systems, instead of being swayed by negative emails, negative meetings, negative Teams chats messages, they actually become champions of your goals and your vision. In my earlier example, the stakeholders were so enthusiastic about the outcomes of my transition, they failed to recognize what was happening behind the scenes to the day-to-day drivers of the operations. My next lesson here is something that we're all too familiar with. It's the debate between perception versus reality. You can see here in this cartoon that those two people are communicating the exact same thing, but their motivations and their drivers behind that message are completely different. I want you to think about the last time you sent an email or got a text message from your wife, and she said one thing, and you were certain you knew exactly what she meant, only later to realize it was entirely a different conversation was taking place. That's perception in action. We can communicate our visions and our strategy clearly, but we have to remember that there are always hidden drivers and motivators behind the scenes that are influencing perceptions. Let's dive into perception a bit more. Sometimes, despite having the most contagious idea, the most contagious vision or strategy, it doesn't always catch on with everyone around you. It's almost as if there's a different strategy and narrative going on behind the scenes that you're not aware of. I want to take a second and talk about a well-known technology company. Let's talk about Microsoft Vista. I hear some laughs already. So I'll ask real quick, who in this room has heard of Microsoft Vista? I had a couple, right? Who actually liked it? Exactly. You'd be surprised to learn that when Microsoft launched Windows Vista, it was actually meant to revolutionize personal computing with enhanced visuals and cutting-edge security features. But for many, it was terrible. It was slow, clunky, and it didn't integrate well with existing software and platforms. But for Vista, the challenges were more than just the technology. It was about perception. Before most users had even engaged with the platform, IT influencers in the tech world, they had already shaped the narrative. IT experts and early adopters criticized the platform for its deep hardware demands and steep learning curve. And this narrative spread like wildfire, amplifying emotional skepticism towards the platform. For Vista, its emotional skepticism became the primary obstacle. And even good data cannot combat that type of a perception based off of such negative narratives. Influencers, whether it's your seasoned data analyst, your IT architects, or the person behind you in line for coffee, they're shaping the perceptions within your projects. The problem is when those perceptions become the dominant story. That's why it's key that you identify your internal influencers, engage them early, and shape a shared narrative. You can do this by listening to their concerns, addressing their motivations, and most importantly, involve them in your solutions. By getting your influencers early and sending them with a positive narrative, you're actually spreading positive advocacy towards your project. And that's the message that's amplifying the perceptions of your initiative. The last of my 3 key lessons learned is something that I have historically and continuously underestimated and paid the price for overlooking. During the early feasibility studies of your project, it's imperative that you identify those individuals that receive the highest praises from your business leaders. Think about those individuals that are consistently recognized in meetings or thanked in company emails. These individuals may not necessarily be your top performers, and their efforts may not show up on a dashboard, but they're quietly making the impossible happen. They answer late-night phone calls, they diffuse escalating issues, and they bypass your rigid systems, providing personalized white-glove support that your leaders are expecting. That's why it's vital to identify these practices and preserve them. By recognizing the individuals, it's vital that you recognize these individuals for 2 reasons. First, they help you uncover hidden practices like ad hoc workflows and informal processes that are the key to smooth operations. Without these critical insights, you risk missing the glue that holds your operations together. Secondly, these individuals have a quiet expertise that often will bypass your rigid systems and hold more weight than your formalized processes. By engaging with them early and you can shape, again, a shared narrative and preserve those white glove processes that are key to success. You need their continued buy-in and support. While not every process needs to be white gloved, those that do must be identified and preserved. These services have a direct impact on leadership confidence, customer satisfaction, and again, the perception of success. By proactively identifying these political touchpoints, you're building a foundation of trust. Once you have a foundation of trust established, as you exit your hypercare phases, you can gradually begin transitioning to more formalized practices, more formalized policies and procedures. The key is to build a foundation of trust first before trying to enforce these processes. As we come to an end on this journey, I want to take a moment just real quick to reflect on the 3 lessons learned that we've explored. The first one, we need to flip from stakeholders to investors. Investors are accountable for critical decision making and accountable for sending messages and communicating your goals and vision. That accountability forms advocacy, and advocacy is what you need to drive your projects forward. The second, voice of perception. Perception equals reality. Whether it's Microsoft Vista's platform launches, whether it's your technology implementations, or moving to a managed services provider, perception equals reality, and that perception is created by your influencers. The third, white glove support. It's vital that you identify and preserve those pockets of white glove support. Those are critical to holding your applications, your processes, and your transitions together. They are the critical glue that makes your operations run smoothly. The good news here is these lessons are not just theoretical, they're actionable. So real quick, I have to leave us with a call to action. I want you to think about the last time you had a project, whether it was a technical implementation, a business transition, that was a bit rocky. Think about why. Were your stakeholders truly accountable? Did you preserve all the areas of white glove support? Did you control the perception that was created by your influencers? Now that you've had a second to think about it, I'm officially appointing everyone in this room an agent of change. You can bring these lessons forward into your next project, into your next big implementation. I'll leave you with one final thought. Complex transitions are rarely smooth. Collect a lot of data, involve the right people, and embrace the journey. If you want to continue this conversation with me further, I encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn. But otherwise, I hope you all enjoy the expo, and thank you for your time.